Mental Health Advocacy Services is proud to present the revised 2023 edition of Fair Housing for People with Disabilities, a guidance manual for emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing providers. This manual is available in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. People with disabilities face many different obstacles to housing stability. For example, just as a staircase may present a barrier to housing for individuals with physical disabilities, a rule prohibiting emotional support animals could prevent someone with a mental health disability from becoming and staying housed. Fair housing and other laws aim to reduce obstacles to housing stability by codifying the rights of people with disabilities to be free from discrimination, including protecting their right to request reasonable accommodations. This manual will help emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing providers understand their obligations under fair housing, disability rights, and other applicable laws, implement policies to receive and respond appropriately to reasonable accommodation requests, and advance fair housing by helping residents with disabilities obtain, maintain, and enjoy accessible housing. The manual begins with an overview of fair housing and other disability rights laws and the key legal concepts within these laws. Housing providers will learn that not only must they refrain from intentional discrimination, but they must also avoid policies and practices that unintentionally discriminate against people with disabilities. And they must make exceptions to rules or policies that would otherwise have a discriminatory effect. Housing providers will learn the meaning of disability under fair housing laws and how to invite, identify, consider, and respond to reasonable accommodation and reasonable modification requests from individuals with disabilities. The manual will also help housing providers understand that residents with disabilities benefit from general due process protections, as well as fair housing protections related to the source of income used to pay rent. The bulk of the manual addresses real-world scenarios in a question and answer format. The questions focus on fair housing principles in the 3 phases of the residency cycle: the application phase, the occupancy phase, and the termination or transition out of residency phase. The answers discuss best practices for complying with fair housing law in each situation. The manual gives housing providers a general framework to not only keep their own housing resources broadly accessible to people with disabilities, but also to advance the fair housing rights of residents as they transition to permanent housing. Keep in mind that the information in this manual does not constitute legal advice. Rather, it is meant to educate housing providers about fair housing laws as they relate to people with disabilities. If you need guidance on how to comply with the law in a specific case, it is important to seek the advice of an attorney. We hope you find the manual helpful. If you would like to request a training on fair housing laws, please contact Mental Health Advocacy Services at info@mahas-la.org. If you have questions about a specific fair housing situation, please call our general intake line at 213-389-2077. Thank you.